Welcome to the concluding event in the Climate Change and Consciousness Book Fair extravaganza. Extravaganza is the word my daughter Rachel put onto it. She added that. And thank you, Rachel, for your help in creating the beautiful flyers that circulated for this series dedicated to the books, the creativity that was spawned by Climate Change and Consciousness, which had a seedbed event in 2019 in Northern Scotland, but since then has become its own being, generating many incredible partnerships, such as the partnership with Girl God Books that we celebrated yesterday with Ubiquity University, where we are hosting the Regenerative Health for a Climate Changing World MA PhD program. And the founding people, many of whom are right here in this room at this moment, the people who are on the ground, Jennifer, Anita, Claire, and I, have continued to build the substance of our international community. And that in itself is a sustaining force. No matter what its size, we can never underestimate the power of our unity. And that has been a theme throughout this week. The whole question of numbers, what is the importance or lack thereof of the numbers of people that assemble, or is it the intention? Is it the substance of what is being put into the biofield? Doesn't that trump the numbers every time? And the other question we have been exploring that feels pertinent to this gathering is what keeps us going? How do we continue against the odds, against the daunting external oppressive forces? And this will lead directly into turning this over to Anita, who is a wellspring of true guidance. How do we live and serve in the midst of overwhelming grief and rage? So Anita Sanchez is a beloved elder, a beloved voice of the feminine and voice of feminine leadership. And I was saying yesterday that the two voices that have really stayed with me like pillars since Climate Change and Consciousness are Vandana Shiva and Anita Sanchez. Indigenous women are my right and my left arms as I do everything I can to stay on board and be a voice for our living earth. She's the author of The Four Sacred Gifts. And for me, one of the principles forgiving the unforgivable resonates so much at this moment. And I have asked Anita to weave that into the transmission that is coming through her for this gathering. So with that, I am honored to share with you my dear friend, Dr. Anita Sanchez.
Rasmus. Yes, thank you so much, Stephanie, and all of you women here. I just really, it's our time. It's our time. And to raise our voices. We've always been present. I was just talking to somebody. I'll get into the forgiveness part as part of what I want to bring, that to remind us of who we are and what we are. But I was talking to somebody about and he said, what did he say? He said, the sacred masculine is all messed up, and so it is time for the sacred feminine to rise, because everything's a mess. And I said, I think you're right, things are messed up because it's an imbalance in an indigenous community. It's like a bird flying with one wing, And that's the patriarchy, the masculine, where the patriarchy has messed things up. The sacred masculine is fine. Sacred masculine is still sacred, just as the sacred feminine has always been sacred. And that's part of my message I want to say to all of us is that, in this hoop of life, all of us in an indigenous mindset, which quite a number of indigenous people that I know around the world, I don't know all of them, 6% of the world's population, but nonetheless, most of us see the hoop of life as being connected. Everything's connected and nothing's higher and nothing's lower. And in this circle of life, there is no edge and the center is everywhere. In every one of you here and every one of you who tuned in later and watched or listened to this is that it's in you too. Now, the complication though is that sometimes, especially two-leggeds, I'd say mainly two-leggeds, human beings, don't always act in a sacred way. But that means remembering. That doesn't mean you're faulty. It means you have great need to remember. And so with that, I'll lead into the ego prophecy and the 4 gifts, and I'll stress the forgiving the unforgivable. But so there was a time in the 90s where I had already been working for some 15, 17, 18 years, doing work of inclusion, culture change, diversity. And I felt like everything was too slow. Women weren't rising in business and corporations. People of color weren't rising. White men weren't rising unless they fit a certain mold. And so I was just like, I need to do something else. And I was volunteering at this gathering, as I do every year, put on by ACES, American Indian Science and Engineering Society. And they help prepare young people to go into engineering, science, but also to go into the corporations where I would be doing their work. And so I would always volunteer and teach them things that I teach in corporate. However, added to that was, how do you keep your culture in a place that may be antithetical to you? So that is a perfect thing in terms of what we're talking about, because when I was there, and I was running around like a chicken with her head cut off, asking my elders, tell me what's happening, what should I be doing? What is it? And they just smile and they didn't tell me. So one of the things about elders is that when they know, why would they tell you? They just let us trust. That's what it is, trust. It's going to come through. And so while we were there on the second or third night, we go into this room, we get smudged in sweetgrass, and oh, it's just beautiful, sage. And we go in, and there's this hoop in the middle of the room, and it's symbolic of the eagle hoop prophecy. And this elder, Mokihikan elder Van Koyas, comes in and he explains this to us, which totally changed my life, which allowed you, Stephanie, and Claire, and Jennifer, and many, many women all over to come into my life. And so when he came in, he said, all right, everyone was quiet. There were about 400 of us, but we were all very quiet because it was so, when you're in a sacred space, it connects to your own sacredness. So of course it's expanding. And so he begins and he says, this is a prophecy, the ego prophecy. And he was the one that had the vision. And at night he was sleeping, and in the night there were these lights, like starlight, coming down and connecting to his head. And as they came down, he's looking at it, and a tree is forming. And there's this beautiful tree, he says, but then it goes through like the different seasons. And in fall, and then finally when it's winter, not only do the leaves have dropped off, but the different limbs have gone too. And so what's left there is the trunk, and it forms a circle. And then he hears spirit say to him, gather all over the world, gather, because the two-leggeds, the human beings, have forgotten. They've forgotten how to be in harmony and balance with themselves, with each other people, with all our relations in the hoop of life. So he explained how he didn't know how he's going to get 100 eagle feathers. That's a whole nother story, but he ends up over time getting over this very short time, and he calls out and 27 elders from around the world. So this prophecy lands in every continent. So you're part of this. And what it said is that, again, to restore harmony and balance, use these gifts. And so the 4 gifts, when these elders came together, they sang, they prayed in their different songs, and had different colored skin, women, not women, there were only men there. It was very, all of that happening, hence we need women's voices. But nonetheless, here it comes, and the prophecy. To have that many elders come from different parts, from Europe, from Africa, from Asia, from all the Americas, it was incredible. And it towards the end, this hoop that they created with 100 eagle feathers, the fire was going, and Spirit said, okay, put these 4 gifts into the hoop for all humankind to remember how to create harmony and balance. And so they did. And so I want you that are listening or watching to just go ahead, and if you're not driving a mobile, anything, it's safe. You can lower or close your eyes just so you're not distracted, because I'd like you to receive these gifts. And the first gift that Spirit said was the gift of the power to forgive the unforgivable. Take your hands and bring them to your heart and receive that gift of forgiving the unforgivable. And just put that in your heart in the ceremonial part of it, and you all know where that is, just intuitively. And as you do that, you might be recalling some things that you have forgiven. And there may be some things, small and huge, that I don't know if I can do that. But Spirit says, Spirit knows from our sacredness, this is our gift. This is one inherently that we have to forgive the unforgivable. So breathe in and exhale. And now bring in the second gift. Take your hands and put them back onto your heart. And this is the gift of the power of healing. The gift of the power of healing. Put that in the ceremonial part of your heart. And breathe it in and exhale it. Breathe it in again. And healing. Oh, what a wonderful gift we have. And we have to use it every moment we can. And in fact, when I travel a lot. So when my kids were younger and I'd be home fixing breakfast, I go, oh, it's a good day to heal. And Alex and Nick would say, oh, Mom, you must be the only mom that says that, but it's a good day to heal. And allow that to just go into your heart. And then take a breath in and out, and now take your hands and bring them in again to your heart, and to receive the third gift. The third gift is the gift of the power of unity. The gift of the power of unity. And breathe that in and put that into the ceremonial part of your heart. And you might be, different images might be coming to you, colors, whatever it is that comes to you, that represents unity. It may be your family, it may be your larger community, organizations you belong to, and maybe with the earth, the water, and all that's so important. And how are we in unity? We have this gift. And before we leave this gift, if you haven't seen yourself, you did nothing wrong, but I invite you to bring yourself into that unity. Is my heart, mind, body, spirit aligned? Is it in unity? That sacred gift is yours. And now as you exhale and then breathe in again, put your hands out and then bring them back to your heart. And the fourth gift that Spirit gave to all of us to create harmony and balance, to remember, is the gift of the power of hope. Hope in action. Put that into the ceremonial part of your heart. Hope. And as you do that, some of you may be thinking, oh, I am hopeful. And unfortunately, in this time, what I'm finding, a lot of people, because of the circumstances that are happening externally, they're like, I don't know if I have any hope. And some even just say, I've been hopeless for a long time. And just know that hope is an energy source. And it's yours. and we'll talk more about that later, but just breathe that in and exhale. And you can open your eyes if you have them closed. And the elders give these gifts to all of you. It's all of us. And what I found in 1995 when I was in front of the hoop, and is that something, when it's so true. It just went right through my heart into my spirit. It was so big. And I thought, oh my gosh. So when I left, that room, I saw one of my elders, Henrietta Mann, amazing. Last year, no, in Obama's time, no, Biden's time. I'm getting my presidents mixed up, but in Biden's time, she received the highest award of a civilian she's done. If you don't know who she is, I'm naming another woman you need to know about. Henrietta Mann, M-A-N-N. Anyway, I go over to her and I look at her, I said, oh, and then I looked at her again and I felt something stuck. I said, I don't know it all, do I? She just shook her head. She goes, Anita, you see things others may not. That's true for all human beings. And when you see things, know things, even the unseen, receive those. And we need you. And what you've been doing is you've been losing hope. And when she said that, I thought, oh my goodness, yeah, I was just, So anyway, at the end of that, I began using these throughout my life. And then as I did that, integrating them, I thought, well, why not in corporate? Why not with business leaders? So I began bringing those in different processes and found tremendous results. First, a little bit of confusion, like why would we need indigenous wisdom in this prophecy? And then very quickly they go, whoa, what we can do when we actually are doing our internal healing and what gets expressed externally between us is amazing. And so that's indeed what has happened. And I want to put in, before I go into the 4 gifts, I want to put in right now because I am so filled up from Finhorn, from the Climate Consciousness Conference, Climate and Consciousness Conference, and because of the people I met. And so my book had already been out. However, I had written another book with a group of Latinas. There was about 10 of us, and they had applied for an award. And I'm at this Finhorn, and I'm going, well, I don't know, mine's 2017. And they wrote me when I'm at Finhorn, they said, Anita, you have 2 years to submit. So hearing all of these amazing people, I'm like, well, this is what I teach and I'm integrating all the time. So when nobody has arrived, we just continue to get better and better and evolve. So I went, okay, so I did. And lo and behold, the 4 Sacred Gifts, Indigenous Wisdom for Modern Times, won in 4 categories. Yes, in 4 categories of the International Latino Book Award. So that's how in part this prophecy, got expanded, got taken in by the 50, there's about 50 people who came to my workshop, but I also talked about it in a lot of different places. It was in film, Stephanie, just all the people that the leadership just expanded this thing like crazy, which is wonderful because we all need, because of the craziness, we need all of these gifts that we have. And so I just want you to know that for everyone, I look at my book, I definitely see the whole world. I see Indigenous people all over the world. I definitely see all the women, Finhorn, and the Latinas who just kept after me, and then the Finhorn inspired me to go for it.
I didn't even know
that's how it came
this.
about. Yeah,
I didn't even know
that's
this.
how it came about. I know, isn't that great? I know. And so if I hadn't done that, because when you win an international award-winning book, then more people hear about it. And so then I can go spread the message because I am a messenger. I got permission as an elder to be a messenger of the Eagle Who Prophecy. So I take it everywhere, to the middle of the Amazon, to the middle of the Arctic Circle where I was recently, to the Black Hills, everywhere that I go, and soon to be going across the Atlantic. And the thing that I know is that every one of these gifts is critical, but critical in a good way. Because what I find is that I always knew from growing up and being taught very little, we do nothing alone. We're not alone. We're just not alone. And we don't do it alone. Us being here, breathing, I tell my clients, hold your breath. The men, generally, and some women at the top who just have holding all this stuff, I just hold your breath. And they're like, till they almost turn blue. And then I just go, okay, what happened? They go, well, that's my involuntary system. Why did you have me do that? I said, no, supply chain, go all the way down the supply chain. What happened? And so they get to, oh, I'm not doing this on like the plant relatives that you call them, the trees. They took my carbon, I get the oxygen. There's a circle happening. I'm like, And then they go on to other kind of things. Oh, and so it becomes easier to say, not carry that weight, because that none of us individually can carry that. But together we can make great movement and we can transform things. So let me get into, unless you have something to say, I'll go into the forgiving the unforgivable. Okay.
The
So the
only
first,
thing I
go ahead.
wanted to say is that I am so inspired by you as a bridge builder, that you take this wisdom into so many different environments, even environments that would not seem friendly to what it is that you are offering. I feel that is a crucial skill, as you said, critical in a good way, skill for these times, because we can talk to each other, but it's how we deliver the message to those who have not heard it and have not previously been open to it that is the force of change. And I am being called to do that more and more. And I gained strength from how you have been doing this for decades already with such ease and fluidity and acceptance. That is the teaching I take in like blessing smoke, listening to you, that you see these other two-leggeds as relatives, even if they're wearing business suits and work in the corporate environment and are maybe even perpetrating violence, directly or indirectly, you still see them in that way. And therefore, they become receptive to what you
It's the
deliver.
listening part. You're right. It's so very important, all of these. And I want to talk about a place, because forgiveness, first of all, let me just say, people have a funny thing about forgiveness. So you might just, especially if you have a pen and pencil, you can write it down, or like, what is forgiveness? I would say in all these gifts, you're gonna, what is that? What is it? Get it to where you can feel it, touch it, taste it, hear it. It just make it so solid. And but forgiveness is, it's generally it's because of something that did or didn't happen, that was painful, hurtful, happens. And then what happens is, unless we're able to use forgiveness, we spiral down in it. And we only have so much energy. Science will tell us that too. Now, everybody, but indigenous people have known for millennia. Now people are realizing, oh yeah, well, if you only have so much energy, how much energy do you want to put on something that did or did not happen? It doesn't mean, and I'm talking to myself, because back when in my teens and early 20s, I thought forgiveness is weakness. Forgiveness is disloyalty to whole groups of people, because we have, indigenous people still to this day that people are doing genocide against. We have other people that it's happening to, and historically and present day. So there's big things. So you're not going to forget those. You're not disloyal, though. And forgiveness doesn't mean you don't seek justice. See, we get caught in this separateness, this illusion, where it's really together in terms of, that's how I'm able to go forward. I'll never forget my 9 years of abuse when I was little. I'll never forget the race-related murder of my father. A white man and a black man in the 60s were having an argument. And after work one day, my father, who was an alcoholic, he would always go have a beer before he came home. And he went there not knowing that earlier that day, a black man and a white man had a fight. And had that happen. When the white man returned, he just saw the dark colored skin of my father and shot 3 bullets through his head, killed him on the spot. Now, most people will tell me, and see even some therapists back when I was a teen and would go to them, oh my gosh, all the things you've been through, and then your father and all this stuff, I've actually had some like, you shouldn't be alive. I'm so, oh, we never say that to anybody. Instead, it's like, wow, are you strong? You're still here. Even if you're suffering, oh my gosh, you are strong. You're meant to be here. There's a message for that. We're supposed to be here. So what I want to say is that this forgiveness really is a pathway to your freedom. Because when I forgave my father for the abuse, and I forgave the man who murdered my father. And please, I know some people will say, oh, you look like you're in a nice place, you have nice jewelry. Doesn't matter what people look like. Everyone has had something. And that gift of forgiveness is there for us to use. And so I was able, in different settings, as Stephanie was saying, because as I started in my early 20s in corporate work, I would put people in circles, white people in a circle, and they'd share their dreams and things that they were taught. People of color, the same thing, and then they would talk, hearing dreams and other things. And what I heard white people saying is, some of them would say, yeah, my parents taught me that I'm better than you, people that look like you and darker. And some said, well, they never actually said it, but we never had any friends over that were, and we didn't go to school with them, and we definitely locked our car doors when we went through their neighborhoods and tried not to. However, then they'd said, and I know what they were doing, they said, but we're not, we'll love our parents, but that doesn't mean we're them. And we have friends, much wider array of friends that are different from us. And we also are trying to change policies and programs, maybe not fast enough for us, never fast enough. However, they're doing that. And that healed the 13-year-old who was devastated, who at that time was so enveloped in the hurt and pain. She just thought, well, that father did that. He had a 13-year-old son who I happened to meet. And the woman, the wife of the man who murdered my father. I kind of have to finish that story. It's left hanging. The week after my father died, the wife of the man and the son of the man who murdered my father came to the door. And I remember I was always by my mom for about 3 weeks after his death. And the woman said, I'm the wife and the son of the man who murdered your father. And I just had to come see you, Mrs. Sanchez. And she started saying, my husband was a good man. He never would have killed your husband. He thought he was black. And you know how black people are. And she started saying these things about black people. And my mom just was shaking, and then she just yelled. I never heard her yell at a stranger. I know she yelled, but not at a stranger. And she just yelled at her and said, stop, stop. You don't even know what you're saying. You don't even know what you're doing, but you're teaching your son these horrible things, this hatred of other people. And I want you to know I'm going to try really hard to pray for your soul, but you get off my porch. And what happened over the years, take a breath with that. And what happened over the years is that I had dreams, but I could never see that white boy's face. It was gone. I saw the woman. I shared the things I shared with you, could not see his face. And this happened to do with not forgiving the unforgivable. But because of the corporate work in the business place, I was like, oh my gosh, I had a realization there that, oh my gosh, that 13-year-old lover, embracer, she didn't know better, but oh my gosh, that summer day, in 1967, when my father was murdered, the six of us, brothers and sisters, lost our father. But that summer day, that white boy lost his father too. And he had to live with knowing he was a murderer. And then all of these things then came forward as like, oh my gosh, Anita, you erased his face. Look at the work you. How many faces are you erasing? Because it can be unconsciously you're doing things. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, I so had to forgive myself. That's sometimes the harder thing to do, is to forgive yourself than even forget another. To forgive myself because I was becoming what I was imagining he would be. Take away a humanity, the actual personhood of someone, not treating it all with dignity. Well, the dreams came, and now I could see his face, and if he was in an airport, I would know who this man was. But what comes to me from some of the most difficult situations in my life is images of those people, actually who are spirits now, but just love. And and what a hard journey. And I just wish for that young boy that he had throughout his life joy, just the best life ever. And to this day, I think about when I see my house, 8 of us in a little house, really small. Um, I would have invited him in. I would have asked my mom to open the door and invite them in. And so when I talk about forgiveness, I share that story because sometimes people go, oh, no, you're talking. Listen, forgiveness, not only, as I said, is a um, pathway to freedom, it is your pathway to your love of yourself. And I no longer say unconditional, because if it's unconditional, it's not love. If it's conditional, it's just not. So just love, infinite love of yourself. When you get rid of and forgive, then that love begins expanding. And then the third part of this, I learned from elder in 2019, before everybody got locked down and stuff. But in 2019, an elder, I was at a Sundance, and he came over and he said, oh, yeah, I heard you're the forgiveness lady. And I said, oh, I've heard about you. You're the forgiveness man, the elder. And he said, that's good what you put. It is the pathway to freedom. It is the pathway to infinite love of yourself. But in your next book, put in, it is the passcode to your own divinity. And I thought, oh my gosh. And I do have that next book I'm working on. And it just deepened that, because there is so much motivation for me to forgive, not false, like, oh, I forgive it, and then it's still doing its thing and it's work. You don't need to lie to yourself. Don't do that. But to actually forgive means that I can use my energy now to create what I want, not spiraling downward what I don't. And what's happening out in the world right now with 34 wars, that's not even counting the climate disasters that people are on the move, climate refugees. All the wars and everything, it just seems like too much. And then the social injustice and the economic situation. I mean, on and on and on we could go. And I could spiral down there, but I can't do it for too long, because what happens is I remember, wait a minute, I have these gifts. I have these gifts, and forgiving the unforgivable is one of those gifts. And I'm going to use that so I can be free, so I can love myself more, so I can, allow a way for the divine, the sacredness to come forward, rather than just the human being, which I forgive too, but to just keep doing that. And so that forgiving the unforgivable is one of the most important things, gifts that you have. And I know that it's really hard, and I'm going to go ahead and say it. People say avoid Israel, Jewish, Palestine, Hamas. All of them are my relatives. And I hurt for them all. And my ancestors hurt, because those people went back, all the pain and hurt. And I take my energy, and what is it that I can do and be? Not out of ignorance, have some understanding, but what is it can do with my energy now and going forward to what I want to create? And that's what I really encourage people to do. And when corporations, Stephanie, I'll open it up for questions on that, but when corporations call me, they generally call me for two things. Oh, we need some unity here. We need unity and we need hope. We need more productivity is tied to that unity and hope and stuff. And I'll go in because you can start anywhere. When you put that in your ceremony part of your heart, whatever one stood out in the foreground, start there. And you can start little. You don't start with big things. And that forgiveness, there's lots of things. Oh, she or he forgot my birthday or anniversary or whatever it is. But start with a little thing, truly forgiven. You keep building that muscle. Anyway, all of these gifts with the corporations, I would start with that, but I would also tell them, you're considered a visionary, but I will say, and spirit knows for sure, but I pretty much know for sure, you don't even have an idea of how big and amazing your vision can be. And some people have pretty big and amazing ones, unless you're also doing your forgiveness and healing. Because when you release that, there's this energy. And that energy, that creativity, that innovation, that love of self and love of others, love of life, love of the on and on, just expands to where you are pulled. I would say, Elder Michael Beckwith, the pastor, would say, pain pushes till vision pulls. And that's what you want, the pulling. It's not that hard. So it's not about this or that in terms of the pain out there in the world. It's like both. And how do we stop and bring forward the love, not the illusion of separateness, get rid of that, our interconnectedness. And so with that, it's so powerful. And I feel, Stephanie, I know the people listening, especially if it's long time, whole groups of people going back, I believe that our ancestors they want to be freed, because we not only bring their strength, but we also have their pain. And when you release that, oh my gosh, what that does for them. And not only for them, guess what? When I'm being a good ancestor now, when I'm being a good relative now, 7 generations going forward, they're going to receive that. Just like I'm the dream of 7 generations back there. I'm the manifestation of that. And boy, I want to do the best with that. And I think all of you wouldn't be tuning in and listening, and unless you also want to have meaning in your life. You want to be the best of who you are. You want to tap into that sacredness, because please, I don't want it to be so heavy. And yes. And then the other thing I'll tell you about that, and I'll stop so you see what you want to ask about forgiveness, then I'll move to the other ones much quicker, is that what I find since 1995, but got stronger as I kept integrating these gifts. People will say I'm brave. I go into warring situations. I go into lots of situations. I think I'm brave, but I have fear. So I want to say to people, you can have fear. You can have like, I'm not holding, I don't want to let go yet. Yeah, it's not that simple. Things will come back up, but you get to deal with them. And that is really incredible, just incredible to be able to do that. And for women who might be tuning in more, because generally in these talks, more women, right? Stephanie, I want to say this. I've been working for decades on using these gifts and integrating and sharing them with people. But 18 months ago, I learned that I was going to have a granddaughter. She's now 15 months old. She's gorgeous. My first grandchild. And I went to my husband and I said, if I didn't know better, I feel like I have postpartum depression. And that's not something to laugh about, because I know what that was with my other 2 sons. I had it. And he just looks at me like, I said, yep. I'm gonna call my elders. I'm gonna go see the doc. I'm gonna and we got to find out what's going on. All right. A daughter. I had 2 sons. Horrible things happen to boys and men too. In fact, they can't even speak of them, that society tries to stop them. It was like dropped into this, oh my gosh, I'll never be able to protect her. What all the things, and it's just spiraling in that downward thing. But internal healing, it is internal. We each have to do our internal healing. We don't have to do it on our own. We do not have to do it on our own. You have Stephanie's methods, Claire's methods, Jennifer, Susan, I'm sure Rachel, you do too. You don't have to do it alone. And so what I did discover, and I just thank that little baby, that Viviana is her name. I just thought, what a gift in the world you are. And personally to me, that you allowed in the depths to come out more of the forgiveness that is mine to deal with. And so I feel lighter and more expansive. And I think you will in all these gifts feel that way, because then you realize, wow, I've got everything rooting for me, everything, everyone, all the sacredness that there is. And so the main thing is every day just wanting to be in service, not just in service to other, in service to self. Because if you're loving yourself, you're in service to yourself, so you can be in really healthy service to others. So I'm going to stop with that and see if there's any comments about forgiveness or anything else, and I'll do the others really quickly, the other gifts, go through them. Any comments, anything that strike you? It doesn't have to be a question, it could be just a comment, what you're feeling. Yeah. Go ahead, Jennifer. We have
Well,
time for me. Yeah, good.
yes, thank you, Anita. This is just, I could listen to you all day long. Of course, I know about the law of conservation. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, but I've never really heard it applied in the way of when you free up energy through forgiveness, that it's as if energy is being created. It really isn't. But and I just loved that concept, and I'm sure that it's resonating with the people in the corporate world that you're dealing with, because it has the ring of truth that, and I talk about, like, I don't want to feed that energy. I say that all the time. I don't want to feed that energy. And I've just never thought about it in terms of what is the energy that I'm still feeding in my own hurts, holding on to my hurts, or swallowing a hurt that I don't even know is there, but it's still doing damage somewhere in my heart, because I'm not seeing it. I'm not taking it out and looking at it in a way. So anyway, just thank you for that. I've had a real aha from your words. So thank you.
Thank you. That's wonderful. And I'm sure others are taking it in, and you're helping them by what you say to connect it for them. Yeah, it's just more and more ability to move forward. And speaking of the corporate world, I'll just drop this in, because people, those of you think that this is still very light kind of stuff, woo-woo maybe even. High-tech company, I won't name it. It's a global company. One of their products was becoming a commodity. And they brought us in to use positive psychology, and I wove indigenous wisdom, as I do in everything. They went in a little over a year from $25 billion to $29 billion. How did they do that? We ignited the leadership around the world. We had them talking to each other. Silos became illusion, separateness, and they started making sales. $1 million or more can take a year, 2 years even, to make them. They were doing it in 3 to 5 months, and not alone. So these really, you're right, they have a return that way. But even more so, what happens is that the people are using it for themselves, for their families. So many stories about with families. And you struck one note about years later, one of the people came to our workshop. He's Israeli. And he thought he was coming to artificial intelligence instead of appreciative inquiry, positive psychology. But he flew so far, he decided to stay. I'm so glad he did. I can see him. And he came back to do the next week of worth of work, and it was just amazing. And he took all that back. And he was a captain or leader, not a captain, whatever you call it, in the military. And so with his group, he began teaching them positive psychology, appreciative inquiry, and the way he would state things. And so when they were out in the field and in the front line and doing things, they would go, how come that group is sleeping better? How come that group, and they seem like really close to each other and things. It's community, because when you are loving yourself infinitely, you're in community. There's no way not. And do we need community now? So what I want to finish with, he wrote an email to me and my husband Kit, and he said he retired, it's probably 8 or 10 years ago. And he said some of the other leaders asked him to teach him some of the things so they could take it to their group. And he said, and I did, and Palestinians need this too. And so I just was like, yeah, we need this. We need the love. And we need all the tools that help us to do that in the biggest way we can, loving ourselves and others. Yes, Susan?
I would say thank you, Anita, because there's my day before I came to this, in a way, was just the thing that I needed to come to, because I've come from an abusive family, and I've found the way of forgiving my dad. And today, my nephew, who's 48, phoned me to say that he was struggling because he'd been abused by my dad. And I noticed that because I got to a place where I had forgiven my dad, I was available to this young guy in a way that I wouldn't have been if I hadn't. And so I'm now thinking, as I'm listening to you, that where I was coming from was from that place, and that gave us a much wider holding, really. And also I could see, oh, well, we need to do this, we need to do that. We don't want, but yeah, and I even thought to myself, well, have I forgiven him? Do you know what I mean? I found myself questioning.
Good question.
And I thought, actually, yes, I have. But it was good to have the question.
Yes.
So I just want to thank you for that. And also, earlier in the year, I was working and I'd gone for a walk in the morning, and there was an oak tree, and the tree was hollow, and the opening in the tree was big enough for me to get in. And I've never stood in a hollow tree before. So I'm standing in the tree, and the first day I stand there, the tree is saying to me that actually I need to stand on both feet evenly. And that resonated. And the second day, the tree was saying that actually, in order to really give to the world, I have to give to myself. That I've got to be able to receive. If I can't receive, I can't give. And the moment I receive, I can give infinitely. And both of those things came up as I'm listening to you. So I really want to thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that struck a chord with a number of people. It did with me. I'm so glad for your nephew, because you can come from that heart place and listen and really listen, because none of us can tell people when they're going to do that or whatever, but being present in a good way as a good relative. Oh, powerful, powerful, Susan. Really powerful. Anyone else? Not, I'll say a couple more things. How am I doing, Stephanie? Can I just go say a few things about the other? Yep. think she's saying yes.
I feel
yeah.
like everything you're saying, I will speak for myself, arouses so much in a way that I feel is completely positive and completely in sync with this intersection that climate change and consciousness lives in, which is the inner and the outer transformation being exactly a mirror of each other, and how, here you are, here I am, here all of us are, after years of self-investigation and relating to the world around us. And we are still in the beginning place of self-inquiry and how that impacts what is going on outside of us.
Yes.
And
And
I feel the crux of that, the situation in Gaza, in Palestine, in Israel, puts me right back at the very beginning of that inquiry. So you are really stimulating deep, deep reflection. And please continue, because your
thank you.
elderhood is precious.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. That's wonderful. I just want people to take a breath. I was just feeling that more and some of the others, and just sending energy. So I think it is a good place to go in terms of the inquiry, and then I'll get into the healing. I wonder when people don't inquire of themselves, because then it's like, see, I didn't do that back then, and that's why it took me longer to then forgive the unforgivable. So one of the key things in healing, you need it in forgiveness, you need it in all these gifts. Number one, listening. You need to listen to yourself. Listen to what's going on inside your heart. You'll listen to your mind, because that doesn't leave you alone. So, but hook it up. What is happening? And keep listening and listening. And going out by a tree, like Susan said, things come through. Maybe you're a water person, so sitting by the ocean, whatever it is. That inquiry is important. So that what I found in researching and talking to elders in different parts of the world is, in their healing, listening was present. Second, supportive relationships. Now, those supportive relationships, again, that's what I was talking about. You do nothing alone. That could be a therapist, it could be a friend, it could be, whoever. But no, that also can be nature. That could be a stream, it could be a tree, it could be the sun. Oh my gosh, that healing. So that's listening, supportive relationship. Then the third thing is love of self. Love of self will pull you. And it hurts, because I understand when people say, oh, I can't find the love of myself. I wish I could say I didn't understand that. I can't understand in perhaps their specific ways, but when I was 13, I did try to end my life. Thank you, ancestors. Thank you, all the living relatives. It didn't work. And I'm so grateful. And I said back then, no, never again. I'd forgotten. I'd forgotten my sacredness. And I want to be here. So this supportive relationships, we need those. Again, the third thing, the third thing I told you about is love. And your love of yourself will keep pulling you, because, dude, love yourself. It's not greedy. And women sometimes, well, no, I have to give. I have to love heart more out here. Like, hey, you know what? Love's expansive. You can love yourself like infinitely and still have infinite more love. So take it that big. That I really feel confident about. And then the fourth thing is get into action. Some people just sit there and something can come through. However, I know sometimes for my healing, before I go to sleep at night, I'll call on my ancestors. I said, while I sleep, can you bring me messages about how I might approach this? or I go out because I'm in the foothills of the Rockies. I go out by the trees. Or every morning for almost 23 years now, I go and see the sunrise and put my feet on that earth, whether there's snow or not, and just be there, not ask for anything, just receiving the seeds of light, receiving the seeds of light. And then afterwards, it just changes my day. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm part of this hoop of life. And those seeds are feeding me. And those seeds in me then feed out here as well as me. So that's really the healing is those four parts I want to say is just so important. So every day is a good day to heal. And I know I'm speaking to the choir here probably because it really is. There's such freedom in that, all of this. Okay, just take a breath because some of you healing may have been on the forefront. So there's so much you can be doing in that. And there's so many methods and so many ways. And just allow yourself, be in inquiry and allow yourself. Then the third gift that we put, you remember, into your heart, into that ceremony part of your heart, is the gift of the power of unity. And, I think that's hard, Stephanie. And right now, as people are so torn, and they're talking about it out here, this, but it really is in here. It's in here too. And the roots of it are in here. And those roots can be pulled out. Because if you're not aligned here, then what happens is we strike back out in the very ways that we are feeling it towards ourselves. So we have to free ourselves with that. So that unity is great, but also oh my gosh, I've heard such stories of community, because we need it so much. And during those years with the COVID, it taught people, oh my gosh, it was so horrible to be without that in the way that they wanted to. And just know you're not in a box. I'm going to share just what's coming through. It's of a young man. So it was during COVID, and I was speaking to, it's a school of 1,400, but I had about 900. So they were high schoolers, some middle school. And I was talking to them on Indigenous Peoples Day, and I was bringing them the 4 gifts. Do part of it. And I could see this. I just felt the energy. They had the teachers there, but once in a while I could see the students. So I just stopped. I said, okay, what's happening? What's happening with you? And I'm not going to talk anymore till you say something. So one boy, a teacher posts on the screen, he goes, well, I'm just angry. I said, tell me more. He goes, I have to wear these things. Even here, we have to put them on. And, I just want to be with my friends. And I said, what would you be doing different if the mask was on? He goes, well, they would just know. I love them. I miss my friends. I said, well, when's the last time you told them you love them or did something to show them you love them? He goes, yeah, I'm using the mask because guys don't always say they love each other, but I love my friends. And so just listening to him, this whole circle happens. What a genius. I think he was I think maybe a freshman. Then this other boy, in the healing with this one young man, he said, I'm not ungrateful. My family has a lot of money. I couldn't go to this private school without that. And it allows me to be by the ocean. But they send me here because my father's a big wig on Wall Street, and I'm expected to do that. I don't want to do that. I said, well, what is it you want to do? He goes, I want to be by the ocean. I love the ocean. And so I had him talk more about the ocean and all his love. It was beautiful, this love of the ocean. And then I said, must be really hard to feel like a path has been put there for you. So that must be hard. He said, yeah, because I was listening. This kid, it was hard to think that that's his future. I said, now, I just have a question. I wonder what that would be like if you did go to Wall Street and you either brought the ocean to Wall Street or Wall Street to the ocean. what would that look like? What might you be doing? And he said, he just made this face. He goes, and then teacher said, he's going to think about that. What does that mean? So the question, the inquiry is so important. But at the end of that talk, I'll tell you, I've had standing ovations of 7,000 people. But during COVID, the teachers turned the things, kids were standing. Because before we ended, I said, and I say that to all of you, I know this is true for ancestors, but it's true for me. I said to them, you know, I'm one of the older ones. I'm one of those old people. And this is not just yours now. You are the present, you are the future. But this is just, I'm going to be here. I could be in front of you, beside you, behind you, underneath you, above you, whatever you need. I'm here. I'm not going away. And probably when I'm 6 feet under, I'm still coming. I'm still coming to send the positive message of what you can do. And that's when the standing ovations happen. And you know, to know that you want community that much with, and you're a part of that, and what that might look like. And it's just, you know, that's the best standing ovation for now that I can ever imagine ever receiving. It was so great. And so just take a breath on that. Aren't they beautiful, the young people that bring them in here? Because they are here. And then the last is the power of hope, hope in action. And there are people who say they're hopeless. And I can understand that. There's all sorts of, we just use the mind, there's all sorts of rational reasons to be hopeless. But hope isn't just about that. Hope is an energy source that you can see, feel, taste, touch, something that may not be seen yet, may not other people touch it yet. That's an energy source. That's a gift. And I want to say, as I learned, nobody can take that away from you. I heard that from people who were, you know, prisoners of war, just really dire situations. Nobody can take hope away from you. You can give it to them. You can decide, oh, you get my hope. And I think when you're using all these gifts, what happens is that you find that this hope, you don't want to give it away. I mean, you're going to instead just illuminate hope to the world, and then others begin finding it in themselves, so that we can keep moving forward. And instead of, you know, all the what's coming through is I'm thinking about the ship in the Arctic with 130 people, mostly Republicans, some Democrats, and they were feeding each other. We were feeding each other hope, because we're seeing where the glaciers were gone. We saw skinny polar bears. They still look big to me, but they were supposed to be like 600 pounds more. You know, we saw that, but it was like, okay, because I don't believe game over. And even if somebody could prove that to me, which nobody has, it's game on because of love. That's all it can be. And I'll close this with a story of hope, because I'm sitting here and I have my different sacred elements and stuff sitting here, but I also have this picture. And this is a picture of my youngest son, who's now 28, turned 28 today. And he's in Taiwan getting his master's in mechanical engineering. But this is where he was, I think 18 months old, maybe not even that, 16, 18 months old. And this is Eddie Box, who's 30 years, he led Sundance for the Mountain Ute people, for the Ute people. And he came up to do a blessing wave. And when there were 13 of us sitting in a circle, and I had taken off, as you can see here, Nico's shirt is off. And Eddie opens this can of sacred earth, and Eddie goes to get into it to make symbols on him. And Nico, with his little pudgy hand, pushed his hand away and put his fingers in it. And he started making these signs. It wasn't like a little kid. It was amazing. And Eddie just held it out, let him do what he needed to do. And then he closed it up and he said, put him down. I put him down, and Eddie gave him a flute that he made. And he said, there was a red bird. What do you call that? I'll think of the name of it, but it's a red bird. And on the other end is the turtle. And he said, Nico, you're this turtle. And this bird is always watching and is always there supporting you. Just remember. And so he takes the flute. He did play it like a 16 or 18-month-old. It was not very good. But he put it down, and Eddie went back into the circle and started singing, and he was doing some drumming. And Nico stayed in the middle of the circle, and he began dancing, but not like a 16 or 18-month-old child would. He began doing all these different, and my son, I could hear on the other side, Alex, who's would have to have been 7, he's 5.5 years older than him. And I hear him say to Eddie, does he know how to do this? And Eddie stopped drumming and singing. He said, the ancestors are with them. He hasn't forgotten. And the ancestors are with you. And he looked at us, and you, and you, and you. You just need to remember and ask. And so that hope in action, that is just so powerful of what you're bringing forward. That energy source comes from lots of different places. And this little 16, 18-month-old Nicholas, reminds me that every day, and especially today, his birthday. And so hope is an energy source. And you can give away. We can all choose to do whatever we want. I just hope you don't give it all away. That's what I was doing when I first received these gifts. I was starting like, oh no, we're not going to have any change. And it's like, no, we have a lot of evolution that we get to be part of. A lot. For love of ourselves, for love of our children, our children's children, and love of other species and their children. Yeah. So I'll close with that and then open it for any last words and stuff. I think we just have a few more minutes till the top of the hour. Is that what we had? I don't know. Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much,
Yeah. Thank you, Stephanie.
Anita. And your words landing with the little ones and the hope of the little ones, reflecting on my daughter Rachel, who is pregnant, and the hope of that little one in a time that does look quite hopeless. What you were reporting about the glaciers and the polar bears doesn't seem to be changing. The situation in the Middle East that is actually accelerating with no sign of change, quite the opposite. How do we bring hope into that data, into that appearance? How do we use our energy that feels the grief of these situations in the interest of the baby in Rachel's womb right now, in the interest of your Viviana, your granddaughter? That's the investigation.
That is a continuing one. I don't think there's a answer. One of them for me, though, is under grief, under anger. What I found as I keep going down is love. I wouldn't grieve so much the loss of whatever it is or whoever it is, except that. And so I can scream at it, I look under it, and there's love. So I will never say that an emotion is bad. I think what's bad is when we stuff them. So it's better to express them and use all the different methods on all the different communities we can to help us to free ourselves. And I think the other one that goes with that is the fear. I think part of this is fear. And so I was asking people about fear, and some were saying the opposite of fear is courage. I don't know what you all would say. You're not fearful, you're courageous. But I remember trying to recall, I was sitting with a group of women elders for full moon. And I said, for me, the opposite of fear, given my journey, is trust. You know, and I still have fear, but now I just look at it in the sand and go, okay, I know you. And it can discern about it, because it could be something like, you don't want to walk there, you're going to fall off the mountain. Okay, something is simple, but it could be something so big. But you can just hold it here in your hand, and then you can go forward with what is actually coming through for you to do. And that's the hope. That's the hope in action. It's working. And I've seen you do that, Stephanie, a lot.
Well, I love
but-
that you began by telling us about this elder who had a vision, that this visionary experience, which was completely real, that then changed his life and ultimately yours, was what launched your entire capacity to forgive the unforgivable, truly, repeatedly forgive the unforgivable, tested in that in your life, tested severely. And what began that capacity was visionary leadership, a vision so unescapable that you could not resist it. You could not say, oh, that was weird. You know, you could not say, oh gosh, where did that come from? You know, it's like, I don't know, maybe I ate the wrong thing, you know, that I'm hallucinating. This person knew this was real. This was guidance. This was directive. You must follow it. I love that you began with that. And this is just one person telling another person, you know,
He's doing, yeah, go ahead. I
at
just want to say,
at a time of incredible loss of hope.
yes, exactly. And he does, Don Coyas is the founder of White Bison, and now his daughter leads it, but he's still an elder there. And that hoop travels to Indian territories constantly in North America. And he does the gifts, gives them, and changing things, helping people end alcoholism, drug abuse, the hopelessness, getting back into ceremony, the hope, the light that's inside of each of us. Yeah.
I want to really support you. I want everybody to send prayers that this issue with your throat resolves.
Thank you.
I am actively engaged in that, even as we are here together, that this resolves and disappears, because your voice is so important. And I know from my work in Aotearoa with Mata Wharihoka, who is the matriarch of the Parihaka Marae, that we met her son, Te Aku Wharihoka, and her niece, Te Waka McLeod, at Climate Change and Consciousness. Mata is the mother of both of them in many ways. Te Waka's mother died when Te Waka was very young. Te Waka is pregnant now. By the way, she is going to be delivering soon her first child.
Oh, wonderful.
Mata Wharihoka, like you, knows that in Indigenous communities, there is a lot of hopelessness, that the response to colonization has been hopelessness, drug use, alcohol use, violence within families. And yet she is a remarkable tower of hope, very practical hope. She's a very practical woman. And she's seen the worst of it, and she's experienced the worst of it. And she's in a hopeless state herself right now. Her health is severely deteriorating. So please, as we send out prayers for Anita's voice, I ask you to incorporate Mata Wharihoka. She is the subject of my forthcoming book. It'll come out next year. These feminine elders who have never allowed themselves to give up on their people, and their people is the world. And Mata, like you,
Yeah. I want to add a thing before your closing. 'cause I think
please,
you're about to
but
close.
like you, Mata
Yeah.
looks at all of
So
us as
you
her
speak-
relatives.
Yeah, you speak the truth, Stephanie, and I really appreciate that. And one of the things that is true, alcoholism and drug abuse is highest in Indigenous communities. What I want to leave you with, though, is it's not surprising that's a problem. What is a miracle is how many of us aren't,
Hmm.
because there are actually many of us, many more than the other. And those others with the drug and alcohol, those are still my relatives. So I'm not, everybody's part of the soup. So we need to heal and support it all. And I'm reminding people now that 80% of the most biodiverse lands left on our earth, on our grandmother earth, are lands that Indigenous people are on. That is not a coincidence. And that is not drug or alcohol use. That is staying connected to the spirit of the land, the water, all of the beings, these sacred beings. And we are still on those lands, protecting them. And we need prayers for that, because people sometimes don't get it. This will be my last story. Last year on Rights of Nature, I was at a conference, 200 Indigenous people, and they had on the stage 5 high schoolers, and they were telling their stories. And the story was that they'd heard from their elders and their parents that where their territory was up in this river, they didn't get big fish anymore, so they couldn't make some of their foods. And they would complain about it. And these high schoolers got together and go, well, let's solve this problem. We hear this from the elders all the time, and let's solve it. So they started going at it. And I'm trying to remember what the little fish is that it's called, that the big fish eat. Anyway, I can't remember it right now. But they went at it. Some attorneys volunteered to help. They go this whole process. They got the rights of that little fish in Massachusetts, up in this territory. And here's the thing: the big fish came back. The big fish start coming. Martha's Vineyard and some of these other places. Oh my gosh, the fish are there. The fish are coming back. That river doesn't just begin and end on that territory. That's true for that ocean doesn't begin and end on those shorelines. You get that? We don't begin and end with just this body. That I want people to have in their hearts and minds as we close this, as you close this, because I know you need to talk about the others, but that is so important. So I am so elated, and I know you write books, Stephanie, you've helped so many Indigenous people, big supporter. That's what I want people to remember. 5% or 6% of the world's population, 80% of the biodiversity, we all need it. So let's love each other. Indigenous, non-Indigenous, part of me has funny saying that because we're all ultimately Indigenous, but we know modern day, it has its different definitions. So thank you for being a truth speaker, Stephanie. And yeah, for awakening that in me. It was just coming through so strong. Yeah, and I love those young high schoolers. We just got to solve this problem.
Anita, I just wanted to respond to your question about the relationship between fear and courage.
Yeah.
In the military, the recognition is that everybody is afraid, but that courage is the capacity to act in the face of fear.
Yeah.
It's not an opposite. It's a capacity. And,
Love
you know,
that.
you can either respond to fear by becoming immobilized, frozen, or you act. And that's the challenge we face with climate, is the ability to act in the face of the fear.
Thank you, Bob. That's beautiful. I'm going to add that. Bob, Youngty gave me this. No, it is.
I
love
don't
that.
need a footnote.
Yeah, no, I know, but I love acknowledging people. That's important to me. Because too often people start just, oh, well, you couldn't have gotten that from what appears to be a white guy, but you could be indigenous, you could be Latino, you could be a lot of things. But we cut through that stuff to where we can, be present to and resolve out of love, loving our grandmother Earth and all
Yeah.
that. Moving forward. Instead,
I love that you're saying that. I love that you're saying that a woman elder is saying that. My experience is one of not being acknowledged so frequently. And those of us who have not been acknowledged need to model the efficacy and the vitality of acknowledging others. I love that. To me, that addresses that very small thing, which is quite big in many regards, demonstrates everything that you've been talking about. The anger at not being acknowledged could be transformed completely through generous acknowledgement. That's bringing tears to my eyes. So thank you, Anita. Thank you. What a beautiful culmination of this series. I have felt the opportunity to receive during this series and be fully present. It matters not the number of people. It matters the biofield that we generate together. And I'd love to have parting words from everyone to bring all of our voices into the circle before we close. All of you are already familiar with climate change and consciousness that miraculously lives on, just as Anita and I miraculously live on, despite the threats to our lives that all of us miraculously live on. That itself is the sign of hope. So, Jennifer, let's start with you and then just pass the talking stick for
Yeah,
just a parting word.
Deep gratitude for the devotion that you've had, Stephanie, since the beginning, since the inception, and keep feeding that flame.
Mhm.
We need it. And thank you, Anita. Always, it's a blessing to hear you and to watch the way you acknowledge your own lineage, the ancestors, and how you attribute the generosity of spirit that you have is exceptional. So thank you. And I'll pass to Claire.
I'm grateful for that because I actually have a meeting that starts now. So I get a chance to bring my voice forward. I've been consciously aware of my quietness today. And I think I've just been really deeply receiving you, Anita. And it's so rich to receive from an elder woman. And your voice has changed, the hearing of your voice for me. And I noticed these kinds of things with my proclivities towards sound and silence. And so I've been intrigued by that too. There's something else that you've brought in that you're carrying. It feels like it might be about a year old, the new thing, maybe a year and a half, 2 years, but it's there. And I think that's what just said to me, just sit and listen and receive. That's all you have to do. So I thank you for that. And I thank everyone for being here. And Stephanie for everything you've done to make every day this week happen the way it has. And I'm going to pass on to Rachel, and I'm actually going to leave. No disrespect intended. And thank you, thank you, thank you. Lots of love.
Thank you so much, Anita. It's so good to see you. I'm sorry I had to join a little bit late, but I appreciate seeing you and being here with you today. And it sounds like you have a throat thing going on. I was gonna, right.
Sinus.
Almost can't hear you, but I heard everything. It made me listen very,
Good.
very intently. And yeah, I echo what Claire said, that it's really special to receive wisdom from an elder, and it's nice to be in contact and hear some of more of your story. And I'm sorry there's not more people here to hear your words, but the message will ripple out with everything we're carrying. And yeah, it's great to see you.
Thank you.
And I will pass to Susan.
Well, first, I'd just like to say that I feel totally blessed. Blessed to be here, blessed to have been here for the last few days. And I want to acknowledge you, Anita, for your generosity in every way of being here. And I just felt really gifted. And I want to acknowledge Stephanie for all that she does and all that she makes possible. And I was reflecting on what I'm doing here, and I'm here to awaken the slumbering parts of myself. And yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
I think Bob,
Best, Bob.
yeah, thank you.
Well, I always have to thank my wife for all of the things that she does, that she brings into my life. There's so many riches that I can credit to her. And Anita, today you are one of them. So I'm appreciative of this gift. I also must, sorry I was late joining. I've got this planting project in the yard. I just ran into an obstacle with this morning and had to take longer than I planned. But I was glad I had a chance to join you. And from my perspective, from my work with climate, I mean, one of the things that I see is that our civilization, when I say our, I mean Western European civilization that I have, that my roots come from. I mean, we all were indigenous at some point, but it's my ancestors that claim responsibility for creating this culture that has now come to dominate most of the planet, and it's failing. It's utterly failing. And what I watch is the collapse of that. And when we watch these hurricanes, for example, and the fires, what I'm seeing is that the Earth is now striking back and saying, what you've created is not sustainable. It's not okay, because it's not consistent with life. It's destructive of life, and it cannot survive. And so when I hear you and other indigenous leaders, and people like Mata and many others, I'm really hopeful, and almost what I expect is that the indigenous communities will provide the seeds of a future civilization that will survive what we are now seeing as the unraveling of this other culture that is not going to survive. And so I'm just thrilled in a way to hear your voice, to know that you acknowledge that there is a role for the indigenous community to play, and that you're willing to step up and play that role, because somebody has to.
Oh,
And
Anita has
it's,
been doing that
and
for
it's
as
the
long as I've known
indigenous,
her.
yes, but it's the indigenous community that has the sense of what's needed for 7 generations. And that is going to be the source of a lot that we will all depend on ultimately. So I thank you
Thank
for
you.
your leadership.
Before you close, Stephanie, can I say a couple words?
Please,
You brought
yes.
up your wife. I've got to bring up my husband. In December, we'll celebrate 51 years.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
I know, long time. And the other thing is, I want to let people who watch this to the end is forsacredgifts.com. There's a free song you can get there, and you can learn more about the gifts. And I really hope that that ceremonial part of our hearts just keeps expanding and being.
And I will I will edit this video so that everybody's privacy is protected, but I will focus on that and include that link so that this will circulate beyond this group, and this wisdom teaching that you have delivered for us today will spread far and wide and is already populating itself in ourselves at this very moment. So much gratitude and love for you, dear Anita, and a hui ho, Hawaiian for until we meet again. Yeah, thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Blessing.
Bye-bye.